Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Brian Harris with Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience, and your host for tonight's exciting Educator's preview of the exhibition. You know, the story of Tutankhamun has captivated all of us for generations. And November 4th of this year marks the 100-year anniversary of the historic discovery of the tomb. And Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience, presents this timeless story in a way that will inspire learning and discovery for students throughout the world. Field trip reservations are now available in the upcoming markets and cities, including Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, Los Angeles, and Vancouver, with many more cities to be announced soon for 2023 and beyond as part of this multi-city worldwide tour. We are thrilled to be presenting this exhibition in association with the National Geographic Society. With their rich history of supporting research in Egypt and covering the story of ancient Egypt for the last century, there is really no better partner for this exhibition. The National Geographic Museum is hosting the exhibition and accepting field trip reservations for this fall, and the companion educator's guide provided by National Geographic, which you'll hear much more about later, is a great tool for developing pre- and post-classroom lesson plans to enhance the experience for your students. Now here's what you can expect for tonight's event. We've got an action-packed evening for you. We're going to start with our creative producer, Mark Locke, who's in Boston, to provide a brief tour of the current exhibit. You'll get a chance to see some of the great educational content and learning opportunities and integrations into this incredible immersive experience. After we wrap with Mark, we're going to go out to Dan Byerly, the Director of Content and Innovation for National Geographic Society at the National Geographic Headquarters in Washington, D.C. Dan will be leading an esteemed panel, including Jihan El-Adidi, the former cultural officer for the Embassy of Egypt in Washington, D.C. We're so honored to have Jihan a part of the panel. We're thrilled to have all of our guests join us today to provide you with some great insights into Beyond King Tut, the immersive experience, and the educational opportunities it will afford your students. During the event, feel free to post any questions you have in our moderated chat, as we have members of the National Geographic Education Department on hand to answer those questions throughout the event. I'll also take a moment at the end of the event to speak to some of the commonly asked questions. So without further ado, I know you're as anxious as I am. Let's go out to our creative producer, Mark Locke, at the Beyond King Tut exhibit in Boston. Take it away, Mark.
Well, thank you. And welcome to National Geographic's Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience. My name is Mark Locke. I'm the creative producer of the exhibition. I'm so very excited to take you through the exhibit today. You know, this is something that we've been working on with National Geographic for the last year or so, and I think we put together something quite unique, something quite special. As many of you know, this is the 100th anniversary of the discovery of King Tut's tomb. Well, how to tell the story now that the artifacts are back in Egypt? Well, this is a brand new way of storytelling, a brand new way of experiencing this exhibition. We're here in Boston. I've watched guests go through, really guests of all ages, enjoying it very much, but especially students. You know, students really connect with this story, with ancient Egypt, but really the 9-year-old boy king. So like I said, I'm very excited. I hope you are too. Let's take our journey through the exhibition. Let's go. This is the first gallery of the exhibition. We call this the Path of Discovery. And this gallery, this space, really focuses on these incredible photographs that documented the discovery of the tomb. They were taken by Harry Burton, a New York Metropolitan Museum photographer, and the documentation of every step along the way really is incredible, and we bring that all together in this space. These black and white photos, but there's also cracks in the wall that you can kind of peer into. And for the first time, these photographs are colorized, and I think really bring them to life. November 4th, 1922 was the date of the discovery, but why was it important? Well, most folks thought the Valley of the Kings, had been exhausted, meaning there was nothing left to be found. But the Egyptians and Howard Carter pursued and persisted, and when they made that discovery, and Carter broke through the wall, and someone said, "Can you see anything?" And he saw the inside of the tomb, and he said, "Yes, wonderful things." Well, that is where our story begins. You know, Tutankhamun probably would have gotten lost in the pages of history if it wasn't for this amazing discovery. He was considered an insignificant king back then and before this discovery as well. You can really tell that when you look at the size of his tomb. It was quite small. It was a small royal tomb. Only 4 rooms: the antechamber, the annex, the treasury, and this room. This was the burial chamber. When Carter poked through, he saw a solid wall of gold, and that was this shrine in front of him. This shrine, along with other shrines and other coffins, protected the mummy of Tutankhamun. And as you look at this multimedia display, you can see those interlocking shrines, those interlocking coffins here in front of you. The outer coffin, the second coffin, and finally, the solid gold coffin that held the mummy of Tutankhamun. This gallery is a favorite of mine. We call it the King's Life, and this space celebrates the life of the boy king. Before he became king, when he became king at 9 years old, his relationship with his father, the things his father did in advance of Tutankhamun taking the throne, and then finally his unexplained and to this day still mysterious death, a very untimely death at 18 or 19 years old. Throughout this space, we see the incredible imagery, the photographs of National Geographic photographer Kenneth Garrett. We also see the incredible gold mask, 16 feet tall, as you see the light move across it. And then finally, something that's a favorite of mine, and I've noticed a real favorite of our guests. This is a game that our guests can play. It's called Senate. And what makes it fantastic, Tutankhamun as a boy played the same game. On the wall here, there's an image of a small Senate game. It was only this big. He probably carried it in his pocket. He sat down next to the Nile. He sat down in the palace and played this game. Children of the day, along with adults, played this game of Senate, and our guests, both adults and children, can also play the game of Senate. You know, I think we're all fascinated with mummies and the process of mummification. The Egyptians had a process, and in this gallery, we talk about that. Here, represented in a long scroll, the number one step was removing the organs. Into the canopic jars they went. The preparing of the body, the wrapping of the mummy in linens and attaching the amulets and the necklaces and the dagger in case of Tut. Protecting the mummy with the shrines built around, like we showed you in the burial chamber. The weighing of the heart ceremony, and then finally that journey into the afterlife. The next 2 or 3 galleries talk all about this process, the burial process and the preparing of the mummy, as in this case, Tutankhamun makes his way into the afterlife. You know, this is really the crescendo. This space, this immersive space, 22-foot walls, projection all around the walls, the floor, the sail, the scenic element of a boat. This is you taking the journey with Tutankhamun into the afterlife. We're in the Lake of Fire right now. It was a scary adventure, but an adventure with a payoff where Tut finally made it into paradise. Our journey today comes to an end here in the immersive room, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of stick around a little bit and lose myself amongst these incredible objects, these images up on the walls, bigger than life. It has been my pleasure to take you through the exhibit today. We didn't see everything, but I think I gave you enough of a taste of what we're doing here. We're very proud of it, proud to work with National Geographic, and I certainly hope you can come see the exhibition soon. So once again, thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you here soon.
That incredibly compelling look at Beyond King Tut. I think it's evident when you listen to Mark that he has such a passion and holds such great affinity for this 100-year-old story. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I would like now to introduce Dan Byerly, Director of Content and Innovation for the National Geographic Society in Washington, D.C., who'll be hosting our very special panel discussion this evening. So Dan, please take it away.
Thank you, and welcome to National Geographic. I'm here with three experts who helped develop the museum exhibit. Jihan El-Hadidi, the former cultural officer at the Embassy of Egypt in Washington, D.C., Brennan Maloney, manager of special projects for the education team at the National Geographic Society, Fatma Ismail, the U.S. Director for Outreach and Programs at the American Research Center in Egypt. Let's start with you, Jihan. Given your history in helping to keep Egypt at the forefront of the world stage, how do you feel about Beyond King Tut, the immersive experience?
Well, as an Egyptian, I'm extremely excited and deeply proud to see this exhibition. National Geographic did an amazing job in creating Beyond King Tut, the immersive experience for audiences in the United States. The amount of effort, accuracy, passion, and spirit put in this exhibition makes it very impressive, and it fills me with pride. Also, the sounds, sights, and overall mood of the exhibition, it really transports students back to ancient Egypt for a unique and fun learning experience.
Now, when you say learning experience, how has education been integrated throughout the exhibit?
Well, I would highlight the phrase Beyond King Tut because it indicates that we are not just here to enjoy the fascinating treasures of the boy king, but we are trying to go a bit beyond that and cultivate messages of profound importance for our students today on cross-cultural understanding, on the power of history and culture in promoting friendship between societies and forging strong ties between people all over the globe. Through the guidance of National Geographic and experts who were involved in this project, they managed to build a narrative that is based on historical accuracy and the findings and results of the most recent studies on ancient Egypt conducted by modern-day Egyptian archaeologists, which also makes me very proud. I also think that we have a lot to learn from ancient Egypt. So many lessons that we can teach to our children today, especially on appreciating nature and understanding that the resources we have are finite. They should not be taken for granted. Ancient Egyptians understood that very well, and that's why they were great, and we need to understand that too.
So I'm a former history teacher, and I really want to know from you, why is learning ancient history so important for students?
Well, I believe that history is the best question generator. The more we study and explore ancient societies and ancient peoples, probably we will end up with more questions than answers. And ancient Egypt is an endless reservoir that feeds and inspires our curiosity on crucial themes such as survival, sustainability, harmony with nature. Ancient Egyptians were driven by the desire to survive in a desert land that has a single water source. They were smart in understanding their geographic reality, they were wise in their planning, and they developed a very delicate balance between material needs and the limits of what nature has to offer. They also had a vision for the future. They wanted to build a legacy. They wanted to set the stage for future generations. So everything had to be done in moderation. They were grateful for the countless blessings that nature offered to them, but they didn't take it for granted. And that's really the essence of what civilization means. It's not just about material structures, but about norms and values that pass down from generation to generation, and works of art that are the epitome of human talent.
Thank you. Now, Brenna, a question for you. You're the creator of the Educator Guide for Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience. Tell me, what's in the guide, and how does it help students and visitors better understand the fascinating story of King Tut?
We knew when we were creating the Educator Guide that the exhibit was going to be immersive and experiential. So we wanted the guide to give context and to help visitors sort of prepare for what they were about to experience. Now, geography is our middle name, so it's not going to surprise you to know that the Educator Guide begins with a sense of place, of ancient Egypt, and specifically the Nile River. In ancient times, the Nile provided, right? Food, natural resources. It was a road for people to travel, and the annual flooding cycle of the Nile influenced the way people thought about life and death and the afterlife. We know that the Nile was extremely important, culturally important to people in ancient times, but it's just as important to today's people. The river remains the center of Egyptian life. In fact, 95% of modern day Egyptians live within a few kilometers of the river today. Now, we also believe at Geographic that our ability to empathize and understand other people helps us understand our planet and helps us get along. So the guide asks a lot of compelling questions. Who was this boy king? What was his life really like? If you think about it, Tutankhamun, when his father died and he was named king, he was 9 years old. That's not something that the average fourth grader can relate to, ruling an entire country. Also, kings were always depicted as perfect. Yet we know from modern science that the life of King Tutankhamun was anything but easy. He probably most likely suffered from genetic disorders that made his physical life very difficult, very challenging. So in the guide, we try to get to know him a little bit by looking at and examining the things that were in the tomb. What did he own? Why were those things there? What did they mean to him? The guide also covers the discovery of the tomb and that event and who was involved and what led to it and what we can learn from it.
There are so many interlocking storylines. What should educators keep in mind about this exhibit when they bring their students to see it?
You know, the study of ancient Egypt is core to our study of world history and geography in so many ways. You're looking at a civilization that lasted more than 3,000 years and was deeply rooted in a specific place. I would encourage educators to use the guide before they take their students to the exhibit, to give them context and also to kind of give them a perspective and to sort of prepare them for what they're about to experience. And I would say, educators, be ready, because I think when students go through this exhibit, they are going to want to talk about it. They're going to have a lot to say, and they're going to want to know more. So use National Geographic resources. We have a number of wonderful resources on ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, Tutankhamun, and use the guide before and after. The guide is written in English and in Spanish, and we are, at this moment, translating it into Arabic because we want as many people, we want as many people as possible to have access to this information.
Fantastic. So why is Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience, one of the best ancient history lessons currently available?
Dan, this immersive experience is one of a kind. It creates new pathways of learning because we're targeting students' senses. So sights, sounds, movement, color, images, all of it. And what it does is it allows the student to be immersed, and it makes history come alive for them. And it tells the story in a way that feels new. And in a way, it really is a new way to tell the story, because National Geographic is telling the story in a much more inclusive way. We're asking and looking at the roles of people in Tutankhamen's life, who helped him become king, who supported his kingship, all the way through history, the archaeologists and the scholars, from Howard Carter to present day. So we're looking at the past, but we're also looking at the future. And we're asking ourselves, what does the discovery of this tomb 100 years ago, what does it mean to us today? That's the question we're trying to answer with this exhibit.
And it's a wonderful question for us to switch to Dr. Ismail. Sure. Dr. Ismail, you have a long academic history of studying and excavating in Egypt and other parts of North Africa. You've also worked with several other notable museum exhibitions. Given your experience, what do you think of the educational value of Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience?
Beyond King Tut's Immersive Experience adds great educational value. Obviously, the content, as Ms. Al-Hadidi and Ms. Maloney mentioned, is fascinating, very unique, and there's so much to learn from just this short period of King Tutankhamun on all aspects of Egyptian culture. But Immersive Experience really helps most with students developing their own appreciation of what makes us different and unique and diverse, such as language, race, history, exploring the world and examining someone else's belief system especially forms compassion and tolerance and empathy, and all much needed in this world. I always say immersive experience is as close as you can get to being in someone else's shoes. And exploring that is amazing. It's also a powerful visual storytelling tool that can tell the story in a new way, like you mentioned, and also it can handle complicated topics. The concept of the afterlife is really hard, and even for the most seasoned Egyptologists, but I think National Geographic did a great job explaining this in simple manner to visitors. And frankly, I think this is the best medium for explaining such topics. Another great value is accessibility and opening the world of possibilities. It's very hard to bring a tomb or major objects to museums, let alone classroom settings. So these immersive exhibits provide this amazing and valuable educational experiences to wider groups and different audiences and setting, and can reach far and beyond. And immersive technologies are becoming more popular now due to technological advances such as cheaper VR equipment and improved mobile technologies.
Tell us more about the American Research Center in Egypt.
Sure. The American Research Center in Egypt, or RC, is an American nonprofit organization focused on preservation and research of Egyptian cultural heritage. We have completed over 95 conservation projects in the last 25 years. We have awarded more than $7 million US dollars in fellowship grants money alone. We are affiliated with 30 museums and universities all over the world. But I think most importantly, we are world leader in partnership with Egypt for over 74 years. We host the most important Egyptology conference in North America once a year, and a thematic conference in Egypt also once a year. We are a membership organization. We have over 2,000 members worldwide, and you can find more about our programs on our website, arc.org.
So it sounds like it's been your mission to promote ongoing education for all ages. Is Beyond King Tut, the immersive experience, a transformative approach to education?
It is transformative, and I would even say it's going to be a big part in the education of, in the future of education and museum education specifically. In non-immersive museum setting, you always have that question of how objects and text interact and how long the label should be on the text and all of that. But in the immersive experience, the visitor is guided with ease and transitioned from smoothly from one piece of information or object to the next with no problem. It provides more realistic and stimulating environment for learning. It has also been proven that visual medium leads to better knowledge retention and increased motivation. This is a step forward in the right direction for sure, especially for younger students. Also, this is an excellent opportunity to use the same powerful medium to show visual and historic examples of inclusion and diversity.
Thank you. Thank you, Fatma, Brenna, and Jihan, for such fascinating insight. And thank you to all the educators who joined us today.
Well, thank you, Dan, and certainly thank you to our great panelists, Jihan, Fatma, Brenna. We really appreciate that lively conversation, informative conversation. And I also want to take a moment to just give a really special thank you to our partners at the American Research Center in Egypt. Their great work and mission is so important, and we couldn't be more proud to partner with RC to broaden this experience's reach and extension of the cultural heritage the exhibition provides. Before I move on too, I want to mention, coming out of the great walkthrough we saw with Mark Locke, I mentioned Mark was in love with the 100-year-old story, and I realized it's actually a 3,300-year-old story because the tomb was discovered 100 years ago. But the 18th dynasty of Egypt, when this boy king at 9 years old took the throne of the most powerful empire of the time. Fascinating to think that this story is actually 3,300 years old. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to answer a few commonly asked questions about the exhibit and the field trip experience. So let's get into that. How do I reserve tickets? Very simply, just go to the website, www.kingtutgroups.com, complete the reservation request form, and one of our group sales agents will be in touch with you to confirm your reservation. Very simple. You can also download the Educator's Guide free of charge, provided by National Geographic, right there from the same website, www.kingtutgroups.com. How long does the exhibition take? Great question. It's a self-guided exhibition, meaning you and your students can stay as long as you would like. The average length of stay is around an hour to an hour and a half, but certainly welcome to stay as long as you like. Check out all the galleries and take in all the content and learning outcomes. Oh, here's a good question. I heard there is a companion VR experience that goes along with the exhibition. Is that available as well for students? There is a companion VR experience called Enter the Tomb in select markets. The VR experience is a wonderful complement to the exhibition experience and has a really beautiful, elegant fly-through of Tutankhamun's tomb, and your students will feel as if they are actually going through the tomb in the really incredible photorealistic virtual reality environment. In select markets, that is available, and make sure to inquire about it when you make your reservation request for an add-on ticket for Enter the Tomb VR. Great question. What ages or grades is this exhibition for? Another great question. You know, we're just so thrilled that the exhibition appeals to such a wide audience and age range. Really, second graders on up, primary, secondary students for our friends up in Canada. It's really just a great exhibition for all different grade levels and ages. And the educational guide has great educational pre and post classroom activities that touch on multiple ages and grade levels. So really any of those ages or grade levels I mentioned and more would be great audiences for this exhibition. And that's it for our questions. If you have anything further that we didn't cover, don't forget our National Geographic Education Department partners are answering your questions right now in the live chat. And that brings us to the end of our program for today. I just want to thank you so much for joining us for this exclusive look into Beyond King Tut, the Immersive Experience. We look forward to hosting you and your students for a field trip soon. And as a reminder, reservation requests are open right now in Washington, D.C., Boston, New York City, Los Angeles, and Vancouver, with other cities to be announced very soon. Submit your reservation requests online, download the Companion Educator's Guide, do that all at kingtutgroups.com. And we so look forward to seeing you and your students at the exhibition this fall and winter and into next year. Thanks for joining.